Welcome to NDE Nutrition Services School Nutrition Program Training. In this section, we'll cover key meal service requirements for the National School Lunch and Breakfast programs. We'll discuss offer versus serve, a flexible option for students that reduces food waste, non-program foods and how to manage their costs, the competitive food policy including Smart Snack nutrition standards, and the importance of proper signage and resources to ensure students and staff understand what counts as a reimbursable meal. All these areas are crucial for ensuring program compliance, financial accountability, and promoting healthy choices for students. Schools are required to clearly display signage that explains what constitutes a reimbursable meal. This is crucial at the point of service, where students make their final selections. Clear signage helps students understand what they need to select, supports accurate claiming, and helps ensure compliance during administrative reviews. The signage must reflect the meal pattern being followed and clearly identify the required components, especially when using offer versus serve. Under offer versus serve, it's important to indicate that students must select at least the minimum required items, such as fruit or vegetable, to count towards the reimbursable meal. Additionally, the And Justice for All Civil Rights poster must be displayed in a visible location where meals are served and claimed. This is a USDA requirement that informs students, parents, and the public of their rights under federal non-discrimination laws. It's a small detail but a crucial part of compliance. On the screen, you'll find the resources and signage free to order for your location. Additionally, there are a variety of resources available to help schools meet USDA meal service requirements. The USDA Food and Nutrition Services website offers tools like sample point-of-service signage templates for both breakfast and lunch, guides on offer versus serve. In addition, our state agency website provides state-specific guidance, training materials, and downloadable tools. These include pricing tools for a la carte and catering items, state-developed training videos or webinars, and policy memos that clarify program requirements. These resources are designed to make compliance easier and support schools in running successful compliant programs. Now let's take a look at offer versus serve, or OVS. Offer versus serve is a provision that allows students to decline some of the food items offered in a reimbursable meal. The purpose of offer versus serve is to reduce food waste, give students more choices, and still maintain the USDA's nutritional standards. Why is it important? It encourages student choices, giving them some control over their meal. It supports school nutrition goals by offering a variety of healthy components. Again, it helps reduce plate waste, which saves money and resources. And most importantly, it ensures that the meals meet USDA meal pattern requirements for reimbursement. It's important for staff at the point of service to understand how OVS works so they can guide students to make selections that qualify for a reimbursable meal. When using offer versus serve at breakfast, there are specific requirements schools must follow. First, schools must offer 3 food components: the grain and/or meat alternate, fruit and/or vegetable, and milk. While there are only 3 components, schools are required to menu at least 4 food items. This gives students enough variety to decline one item while still building a reimbursable meal. Under offer versus serve, students must select at least 3 food items, and one of those selections must be a fruit or vegetable. This ensures students are getting key nutrients while still giving them choices. It's also important to note that offer versus serve is optional for all grade groups at breakfast. Schools may choose to implement offer versus serve based on what works best for their program operation and student needs. Let's go through some examples of acceptable breakfast selections under offer versus serve. In these examples, we assume they are in full portions. The first example, we have 1 grain portion, 1 fruit portion, and 1 milk. This is a reimbursable meal. The student selected all three components, grain, fruit, and milk. The second example, we have 1 fruit, 1 meat alternate, and 1 milk. This is also acceptable. Even though the grain isn't selected, the meat alternate is allowed to substitute, and a fruit is included. The student still has 3 food items meeting offer versus serve requirements. In the third example, we have a grain and a milk. This is not acceptable. The student only has 2 food items, which is below the minimum of 3. Additionally, there is no fruit or vegetable selected, which is required component under offer versus serve. These examples highlight why it's important for staff to watch meal selections carefully at the point of service to ensure meals qualify for reimbursement. For lunch, under offer versus serve, schools are required to offer 5 food components: meat alternate, grain, vegetable, fruit, and milk. Students must select at least 3 components for their meal to be reimbursable, and one of those components must be a fruit or vegetable. This ensures students are receiving a balanced meal while still providing flexibility and choice. All 5 components must be offered in the full required portion sizes as outlined in the USDA meal pattern for the acceptable grade group. Offer versus serve is mandatory at high school level, meaning all high school students participating in the National School Lunch Program must implement it. For all other grades, offer versus serve is optional, but Nutrition Services strongly encourages schools to use offer versus serve across all grades to reduce food waste and empower student choices. Now let's take a look at some examples of acceptable lunch selections under offer versus serve. In the first example, the student chose a meat, a grain, and a vegetable. This is acceptable. The student selected 3 components and one of them is a vegetable, which meets the offer versus serve requirement. In the second example, we have fruit, milk, and vegetable. This is also a reimbursable meal. Even though no meat or grain is selected, the student has 3 components, including both fruit and vegetable, which meets meal pattern. In the third example, we have grain, meat, and milk. This selection is not acceptable. Although it includes 3 components, there is no fruit or vegetable selected. Under offer versus serve, at least one of the components must be a fruit or vegetable for the meal to be reimbursable. These examples show why it's important for staff to monitor selections and provide guidance to students at the point of service. Let's review some of the most common mistakes schools make when implementing offer versus serve and how to avoid them. Not offering all required components in the correct portion sizes. Remember, all 5 components for lunch and all 3 for breakfast must be offered daily. Allowing students to take fewer than 3 components or items, which results in a non-reimbursable meal. Missing a fruit or vegetable selection under offer versus serve. At least one selection of the components must be a fruit or vegetable. Another common error is counting condiments like ketchup and salad dressings. Condiments do not count towards meal pattern. To avoid these mistakes, here are some best practices. Train staff to quickly recognize reimbursable meals and understand offer versus serve rules. Use clear signage at the point of service to help guide students in making correct choices. Consider pre-portioning fruits and vegetables to make it easier for students to grab them and meet the selection requirements. Conduct practice runs with staff and students before the school year begins, so everyone feels confident in the meal selection process. Strong procedures and staff training are key in offer versus serve. Next, in the meal service section, let's talk about non-program foods. These are any foods or beverages sold in the school that are not part of the reimbursable meal. Examples include a la carte items sold to students, adult meals, catering or food sold to outside groups, or vending items managed by the nutrition program. The key requirement is that non-program foods must be priced to cover their full cost. This means covering food costs, labor, supplies, and any overhead expense. These items cannot be subsidized by the federal meal reimbursements. Schools are required to calculate the non-program food revenue ratio to ensure compliance with USDA regulations. The ratio is reviewed during an administrative review. To stay compliant, it's important to track non-program foods separately and show that these foods are self-sustained and do not impact your reimbursable meal program finances. Remember that all non-program foods sold to students during the school day must meet Smart Snacks nutrition standards if these items are available outside the reimbursable meal. Now let's take a moment to review Nebraska's competitive food policy. This policy governs any food or beverage sold to students during the school day outside of the reimbursable meal program. So what are competitive foods? These are foods sold at school during meal times when the proceeds do not go to the nonprofit school food service account. In other words, these foods are sold in competition with the school meals program. This policy clearly defines when competitive foods can be sold. Competitive food sales are prohibited from half an hour before meal service until half an hour after meal service. This rule applies to both breakfast and lunch. So for example, if your school has a vending machine managed by the student council, it must be turned off during the restricted times. Following this policy helps support student wellness by limiting access to less nutritious options during meal times. It also protects the integrity of the school meals program. Keep in mind, schools found in violation of this policy may face reimbursement withholding. On this slide, we review Smart Snacks in schools. Smart Snacks in school standards are federal nutrition guidelines that apply to all food and beverages sold to students during the school day outside of the reimbursable meal program. These standards apply to a la carte items, vending machines, school stores, food-based fundraisers during school hours, and to be compliant, Smart Snack items must meet specific limits for calories, total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, sodium, total sugar. There are also portion size requirements, especially for beverages, which is based on the student's age group. Foods must be whole grain rich, have fruit or vegetable, dairy, or protein as the first ingredient, and meet specific nutrient criteria. Smart Snacks help align all food options in schools with health goals, supporting student well-being and helping students stay focused and ready to learn. In addition to the handouts provided on the Smart Snack decision charts, you can also use the Smart Snack calculator available on the Alliance for Healthier Generation website. The calculators help you enter key information about the product, such as the ingredients and nutrition facts, and then tell you whether the item meets Smart Snack standards. By using both the handouts and this online tool, you can confidently offer Smart Snack items that are compliant and can be sold during the school day at your establishment. As we wrap up, a quick recap of what we covered in the meal service section. We talked about meal service requirements. We reviewed offer versus serve. We discussed non-program foods, the competitive food policy, and Smart Snack standards. And we also referred you to resources for signage and training.